got a special guest. Aaron Lucas said one of the best shooters he's ever laid eyes on. David Ross, man. What's up, baby? How you doing, man?
Not been able to find anybody else if you needed me to come join you, man.
No way. Cut it out, man.
If you asked him, he'd probably tell you I was one of the main reasons why he had to quit. So,
like I said, I did my research. I'm telling you, I did my research, and everybody I asked about you, they spoke highly of your brain for basketball. You know, it's March Madness, man. Who you got winning?
Workmates are going to be too impressed with my work product for the next 3 or 4 weeks, but I'm certainly going to have a good time. I'll certainly have most of the games on while I'm trying to do a little bit of work in between anyway.
Proud to be partnering with Underdog Sports, my favorite place to play fantasy games. You got to check out Pick'em. It is so easy to play. Just pick 2 to 8 stats of your favorite player and choose whether they'll go higher or lower. You can go 20 times your money by going 5 for 5. Sounds like fun? Sign up with promo code COURT, C-O-U-R-T, to claim your free pick plus first-time deposit offer up to $1,000 in bonus cash. I can't wait to see your interest. Another episode, Full Court with CP. We got a special guest, one of the all-time greats, one of the, Aaron Lucas said, one of the best shooters he's ever laid eyes on, if not the best.
That's a lie.
David Ross, man. What's up, baby? How you doing, man?
How you doing? Y'all must have not been able to find anybody else if you needed me to come join you, man.
No way. Cut it out, man. I'm going down the list, man. I got a long list, man. I'm trying to get all the guys that's in range, first, and
Sure.
Then I can start.
No, I appreciate it. I'm excited about joining you.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you stopping by, man, giving us a little bit of your time, man. I appreciate that. But first question I always like to ask my guests, man, is why did you choose South Carolina? Because you're from St. Pete.
Interesting question.
St. Pete, right?
Say it again?
You're from St. Pete, right?
St. Pete, that's right. So
yes.
I grew up in Florida, Tampa, St. Pete area. And Coach Fogler is probably the main reason that I came to play basketball here at South Carolina. Obviously, the year that I signed, we won the SEC outright that year. I think they went 15-1, so that certainly had a large consideration, or it was a large consideration of mine in making my final decision. But seeing how Coach Fogler coached at Vanderbilt as well before he got to South Carolina, I knew going in that the SEC was the most athletic conference in the country, still is. But the way that he played at Vanderbilt is sort of what he sold me on, more motion type offense with a lot of screening and shooting and things that I did well that didn't necessarily involve me being athletic or as athletic, needing to be as athletic as the other people that were going to be on the floor.
Well, you did your job, man. He got a sniper, man. That's what everybody describes you as, man. A guy that just flat out just shoot the basketball.
Well, when you don't move very fast or jump very high, you better do something else well.
And extremely high IQ basketball player, and I got this from multiple guys that you played with, man, and had a chance to lace them up with, and everyone speaks highly of you, man, and just your IQ for the game and how you approach the game, and also who you were off the court as well as on the court. You know what I'm saying? But transitioning to Carolina, just stepping foot on campus, what was the biggest adjustment for you?
I would like to think that I was mature enough to be ready to move 3 states away from my family and be able to live on my own. I was not concerned necessarily about my ability to do that. The biggest surprise that I had is, I was not as talented as you were, and I was not able to hit the floor as quickly as you were your freshman year, because I know you came in the year after I graduated.
Yes.
But that was probably the biggest surprise. We were a very good basketball team my freshman year, and everybody comes out of high school that plays at this level, thinking that they're going to hit the ground running and do great things. I quickly figured out that I had a lot of work to do. And that kind of ties into the IQ comment that you made a little bit earlier. I don't know that I was necessarily, I don't know if I necessarily had that high of a basketball IQ when I got here. But because of the level of talent of the players that I had to play against on our team, I think that certainly contributed into me having to figure out how to play when I was not necessarily athletically as gifted as everybody else.
Gotcha. So, athleticism, but things like your IQ, like that takes that gives you a boost, because a lot of people don't really know how to play the game of basketball. They're just out there using God-given abilities, and studying the game the way you did, is because, like I said, I did my research. I'm telling you, I did my research, and everybody I asked about you, they spoke highly of your brain for basketball.
Well, and I think that was, again, I think I had to develop a lot of that, right? Because when you figure out that you can't use your God-given talents, you've got to figure out another way to contribute. And whether it was screening or whether it was boxing out or making the extra pass, you're a basketball coach now. The things that coaches love to see in players are skills that you don't necessarily concentrate on until you get put in a position where you can't go by the guy that's guarding you, right? So you better figure out another way to be able to contribute. And I think it was a process, but over my 4-year period, I certainly think that I learned how to play the game while I was playing for the Gamecocks, a lot more so than I did in high school, as I could rely on my talents in high school. And I've got to thank Coach Fogler for a lot of that as well, playing for not only a coach but such a good teacher. He laid out the blueprint for what we wanted to do. We just had to go out and execute and do it. So I don't know that it was necessarily all between my ears. I was just executing what Coach had us or asked us to do.
Gotcha. And piggybacking off of that, just playing for it, because I didn't get a chance to play for him. The year I came is the year that he left. Tell me what it was like playing for Coach Fogler.
Sure. I'm a little bit biased, right, because I still consider him a pretty good friend of mine. Obviously, he's moved away from Columbia, but he stayed in Columbia for 15 years after he resigned. So he was still around, and we still got up every couple of months and went to dinner or had a couple drinks. And we still have a very good relationship. But playing for him was a little bit different, right? And my relationship with him now is probably a lot better than it was when I was playing for him. He resigned my senior year. And if you asked him, he'd probably tell you I was one of the main reasons why he had to quit. So he playing for Coach Fogler was different in that some coaches put you in space to be able to go make plays, and I think with some of the rosters that he had, specifically the SEC championship team, right? I mean the versatility that he showed from a coaching perspective, put in Melvin and BJ and Larry in space with shooters in the corners to let them go to work and beat people off the dribble and create offense that way, was one that was very successful for him. But towards the end of his career here, my 4 years, we had a different chemical makeup with regards to the players that we had, and we kind of went back to a lot of what he did when he was at Vanderbilt and won a SEC championship at Vanderbilt as well. We were much more of a motion team that had shooters, but also had some pretty good post players that we tried to utilize as well. So he was very good at creating offensive schemes, especially based on the player personnel that he had on each team. So just the cerebral nature of how he approached every day, and being as specific as possible, I guess, and detailed as possible as he was in what we were trying to do, was very, very helpful for me and my teammates. Additionally, some coaches yell. Coach Fogler wasn't exactly a yeller. He was more sarcastic in nature. So you certainly knew when you didn't do the right thing, even though it wasn't necessarily raising his voice. But he always made a point to know when you weren't getting it done, you knew it anyway.
No, that's funny. That's funny. I'm definitely going to. We want to hear a story a little bit later, but. If you can remember your first practice as a freshman or your first week of practices as a freshman, talk about that.
Sure. Yeah. As a freshman, again, we were coming off of an SEC championship team, so there was a lot of hype. ESPN at that time, I don't know if they're still doing it or not, but they were televising all of the Midnight Madness practices, and we were one of the teams that ESPN was covering my first practice, if you can call that a practice. So we were it was early morning, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So we got in the gym at midnight, and at that time we were playing in the Coliseum, so there wasn't a seat in the house that was open, and we all came in through the rafters onto the court, and it was a pretty cool experience for a first practice, that's for sure. Now reality set in at 8 o'clock the next morning when we had our first two-a-day, and that may be what you're more interested in because I think we practiced 3 hours in the morning, took a couple hour break, and practiced 3 hours in the afternoon as well. I hope I didn't just let the cat out of the bag for any NCAA recruiting violations or practice violations, because I'm not sure we were supposed to be practicing that long. But I was certainly more tired than I've ever been before after that first day, I can assure you.
Yeah, for sure. I know it was that's probably the biggest adjustment, and every level is going to take a different version of you know what I mean? But I think my biggest adjustment coming to Carolina was the speed. Everybody else was fast, strong, and I could jump, I could run, but I just think just thinking the game faster, and sort of like you, I didn't come in with a high IQ as well, but I figured it out as I went along.
Sure. And you did it pretty quickly, as I recall it.
Yeah, I did. I did, man. It was all Coach Duckett, man. He got me locked in on studying film, just trying to learn the game, and because when I came in, I don't know if you noticed or not, they suspended Marius.
Right.
13 games or something like that. So it was like the luck.
So you got thrown into the fire.
Yeah, I got thrown into the fire.
You were the next guy up, right?
Yeah, I was the next guy up, and it was like, all right, this kid got to play, and I was like, and that helped me learn quicker than I imagined. You know what I'm saying? So I definitely feel you on that, man. And but just moving forward a little bit, you talked about your first practice, and the two-a-days and all of that stuff. What was your worst practice you think you had at Carolina?
Worst practice. Now, this,
not shooting. You know what I'm saying? Everybody has shooting or whatever, but it was just a horrible day. Flat out, just all right, man. I got to go regroup. I'll be back.
We got to go reset.
Yes.
Right. I may have had more than one of those, unfortunately. But there is one in particular, and I can't really remember. It was my freshman year. And we had not played our first game yet, but we had sort of our first inter-squad scrimmage. So the practice was set up in a more game-type fashion, and we split up the team into two teams. And one of the biggest things that I had to figure out is I couldn't make the same plays I could in high school. I considered myself to be a pretty good passer. But I couldn't make the same type of passes that I was used to making in practice or in high school, excuse me. In this particular scrimmage, I must have turned the ball over 15 times. And we got to the point in the second half where I think Coach Fogler basically said, if you turn the ball over again, then we're shutting down practice. And sure enough, I turned the damn thing over again. So I was probably the hero from a team perspective,
Yeah.
but that didn't make me feel any better because that was probably the roughest day I had from a practice perspective. I couldn't throw the ball to my teammates. I was throwing it to the other team.
That's funny. That's funny. That's definitely hilarious, man. All right. Quick question. Off the court, chilling with your teammates. Good day, bad day, doesn't matter. What was your go-to spot? Not bar, spot to eat.
I was good. I was good. I was going to say I need specifics here. I need specifics. You know the and you may have had the same experience, man. But JP's training room usually was the hangout spot,
Yes,
right?
JP, man.
And
Shout out
certainly
to
as I
JP.
got older, and my body was a little more weary than some of the younger guys that were on the team, I seemed to spend a lot more time in there, either in the whirlpool or with a heating pad on. But that seemed to be where everybody congregated to commiserate in our misery. So I'd have to say probably we spent the most of our time in the training room with JP, either before or after practice anyway.
Oh, that's funny, man. So,
And we were in, I don't know where did you guys stay in South Quad?
yeah, we were in the quads. Yeah.
You were in South Quad, all
Yeah.
right. Yeah, so we were there first, and I think my freshman year, that was the first year that it opened. So room 206, I know it was Antonio Grant, myself, and Herbert Lee Herbert Lee Davis in room 206, and that seemed to be where the party was at most of the time as well. So we had a lot of our guys spend a lot of time in our room, it seemed like.
Yeah, for sure. We talked about Lucas earlier, man, and I asked Luke, I was like, yeah, man, just give me a story, man. He was like, it was so many stories from that dorm room.
I was going to say you can't say
so
most
many
of those on
stories
here,
from
I'm
the
sure.
dorm room. He was like, man, I don't think you can talk about those, man. I'm like, what are we talking about, man? But I know, that off the court camaraderie as well, that build, relationships for lifetimes. And you talk about guys like, Herbert Lee, a guy like T. Grant, Trav was on you played with Trav.
Yeah, Trav played with us for 2 years, yeah.
2 years, right?
Or with
Yeah.
me for 2 years.
Yes, yes. So guys like that, man. Talk about playing with guys like T. Grant, man, a local guy, somewhat local. He's from, Carolina, and you being from, Florida and having to adjust, Let's talk about, because there was a lot of South Carolina guys on your team.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
And you being a guy from Florida, how was that, adjustment as well?
It was easy.
Yep.
It was easy,
Figured that.
and mostly because of T. Grant and Herbert Lee.
Yeah.
From the minute that I stepped on campus, the three of us did virtually everything together, and that was we were all T. Grant redshirted, so he was a redshirt freshman my freshman year. Herbert Lee was a sophomore when I came in, but we all lived together, and we were the underclassmen on a pretty heavily laden upperclassmen team. And whether it was working out or whether it was practicing or going to the Russell House or just hanging out, we acted like family from the first day I got here. So I'd have to give most of the credit to my introduction and kind of the way that I was integrated into college life. And how easy that was specifically to T. Grant and Herbert Lee, because they took me under their wing, and we were best friends for 4 years.
That's good.
And it wasn't just 4 years. I mean,
Yeah.
T. Grant hit me up the other day. I know Herbert Lee's in Chattanooga now. He's moved out of town, but
Yeah.
we stay up, and as soon as we see each other, it's like it was the day we left college.
Yeah, picked up like you never left off, man. That's dope. That's dope. Talk, because I've heard rumors, right? Heard Aaron Lucas, most athletic. Who would take the cake on athleticism? I've heard some stories.
From an athletic perspective.
Yes.
Luke's probably, if not one, maybe 1A. Herbert Lee was a pretty athletic dude now.
Oh, I know. I know.
So
Oh, I know.
between those two, the guys that we played with, I would probably say they were the most athletic. Now, if we're just talking about getting off the ground, LaRon Williams played with us for 2 years, and he was my homeboy from Florida too.
I forgot about
But
LeBron.
he
I forgot
could
about
get
LeBron,
off the
man.
ground for sure.
I forgot about him, man. I forgot about him. That's my man. That's my man. That's another one. That's another one. Crazy athleticism. Definitely.
We had some athletes, and I don't, T Grant was built like a Mack truck, so
Man.
he was pretty athletic himself. He just had a few more lbs to get off the ground anyway.
Yeah. I still remember, man, coming in, man, and like hooping against T Grant in the summertime. And just that was after my full freshman year. He came back. And just how strong he was as a basketball player. Like I was like, bro, why are you this strong? Like
It's not because he lifted weights. I was in the weight room with him, and he was mainly over in the corner dancing to whatever music was on. The man didn't lift a weight, and he was the strongest person I've ever seen.
No weights. Wow.
I mean, he was in there. Was Billy your strength coach?
No, man. I actually had two. I had two, man. I had Darby Rich and Mark. I had Mark first.
Okay. Yeah. Billy, the strength coach for the baseball team now, was our strength coach, and yeah, we'd be in there, or I'd be in there struggling most of the time. T Grant would come in, he'd knock his out pretty quickly, and then be screwing around doing something else. He wasn't exactly an overachiever in the weight room, but that didn't seem to hurt him at all from a strength perspective.
Oh, we also had you guys didn't have Pat Moore, did you?
No, Pat came in after I left.
Okay, yeah, we had that was my freshman year. We had him. We were doing all football stuff.
Right. No,
He literally tried to.
I heard it got a little more intense in the locker or in the weight room after I left.
Oh my God, it was bad, man. He thought we were football players.
Right.
He literally thought we were football players, man. We were throwing weights around. Oh my God, I never lifted that much weight in my life again. After him.
Well, and I know Scott now does a great job with the guys as well.
Scott's awesome.
For the last decade or so.
Yeah.
We haven't had a strength problem, that's for sure.
I'm 100% sure we don't got a strength problem. For sure. Everybody look like they're about to bust out of their uniforms.
Right.
And just talking about, college and, right now, the landscape of it. What's the biggest difference outside of the kneel and all of that other stuff? What's the biggest difference between high school basketball when you played and now? You think?
You mean high school basketball today versus where it was when we were playing?
Yes.
I would have to say, and I'll predicate this statement by saying I've coached AAU. My son plays AAU. My daughter plays AAU. So I am a proponent of AAU basketball. But today, there may be 1,000 teams in South Carolina. Whereas I bet when you and I were coming up, there may have been 100, right? Yeah. And if there was 100, there may have been 25 AAU teams when we were coming up, right? Yeah. So everybody plays AAU. And AAU does not have the opportunity nor the time from a practice perspective to concentrate, I think, on the fundamentals of the game. And that's why I think you see, on the circuit, they're mainly trying to utilize the athleticism of their players. So there's a lot more off the dribble offense. There's a lot more full court pressure than you typically would see in a normal high school team environment, and quite frankly in a college team environment, right? And I think that's probably the biggest difference is that the high school players that I see, and I know you've been coaching for a long time. I've been coaching high school for the last 25 years. The fundamentals of kids that we're getting now are probably less tuned than they necessarily were when I first started coaching or when I was in high school, because kids, aren't necessarily working on the little things.
Totally agree. Totally agree. I couldn't have said it better myself. Sticking with high school, take us through your high school coaching journey. I know.
Sure.
Yeah. I know
well, I'm a much better coach than I was a player, and that's because I think of the people that I've had an opportunity to learn from. When I obviously playing for Coach Fogler got me started on a fantastic path. My goal coming out of college really was to coach at the collegiate level. Certainly wanted to, if I could, stay on with Coach Fogler, but he resigned my senior year, so that dried up a little bit on me, and I had to go another path, and I leaned on Judge Manning at the time to help me with my second career path, or career choice anyway. But I've been very fortunate in that I was able to go to law school and become an attorney, but I was also able to continue to be a college coach. So I've got the best of both worlds. I'm able to work professionally as an attorney, and as soon as I got out, I taught high school at Keenan High School, and I coached with Zach Norris, and congratulations to Zach, just got number 8 last night, I believe. So not only learning from Coach Fogler for my 4 years here, and still continue to learn on him or lean on him and ask him questions all the time, but having the opportunity to coach for 2 years with Zach and learn a different system and different coaching philosophies, and certainly a winning philosophy as his career has dictated, was very helpful, especially coming from more of a controlled motion type of offensive philosophy that I learned in college, and being able to join up with Zach and learn how he coached the game of basketball, and pressure defense, and really the toughness and the competitiveness with which the teams that he's coached at Keenan, and going back at Newberry, and the other teams that he's coached, they've always played with, certainly has helped me move forward in my coaching career, in adapting and including the philosophies that I learned from him, and trying to integrate that into what I do as a coach as well. After I got out of Keenan, I actually started at Cardinal Newman while I was in law school. And I coached for a gentleman named Wayne Earhart, who, if you've been around Columbia basketball, you know who Coach Earhart is. He was actually the head coach at Wofford for several years and is a basketball junkie. And he was over at Cardinal Newman and asked me to come help him after I kind of got out of coaching at Keenan, because I was in law school. I was getting bored anyway, so I needed to find something to do with my afternoons. And he was much different than Coach Norris was, and he was actually way more structured than Coach Fogler even was. So kind of learning from different coaches from one kind of end of the spectrum to the other kind of gave me a complete understanding of playing high pressure, high tempo basketball compared to also being able to learn very structured half-court ways of playing the game as well. And I've been able to try to integrate a little bit of both of those philosophies in what I do today.
So at Cardinal Newman, you won state championship at Cardinal Newman?
One state championship. I was there. I was at Cardinal Newman for, I think, 10 years.
Yeah.
I was the head coach 2 years,
Mm-hmm.
and I was fortunate enough to go to 2 state championships. We won one, and then we lost the second time I was in the state championship. And I unfortunately at that time had 2 children under the age of 3, so I had to make a decision to either stay married or stay coaching. And my wife won out, and she would have won out 10 out of 10 times. But it was tough to leave that situation, because we had just sort of started the progression of Cardinal Newman basketball at that time, and that's when Brandon Conrad, another Gamecock, took over, and Phil Dieter, who's still the head coach there now and was a manager on for the Gamecock basketball team. He's taken it and run with it, and they've just exploded over there with their program and have been very, very successful. But I'd like to think that it kind of started when Coach Earhart and I were there and kind of started the basketball tradition that it has now anyway. They've certainly taken it and run with it and brought it to another level, though.
Yeah, sure. They're definitely there's a lot going on over there. A lot of fall leagues and a lot of stuff they do over there.
Sure.
Yeah, but and going to now where you are at Hammond. Just talk a little bit about your journey at Hammond up until now.
Sure. Well, I as I said, I had to step away from coaching for a couple years because I had some kids that once you have two kids, and I know you told me you got three kids, so once you got to switch to that man-to-man, you need all hands on deck. So
yes, for sure.
I did my part to help out. I don't know if I did it very well though, because after a couple years, my wife said, "You got to get out of here. You got to go find something else to do in the evenings." So I was fortunate, or maybe I was just the only coach dumb enough to take over the Hammond program after Seventh left, after Chavez left, after all of the guys that they had in the sort of dynasty that they had under Coach McClam for a while. All those guys graduated, and Coach McClam had decided he was going to go to other endeavors as well. So there was an opening, and I was at school with Coach Kimry, who was the football coach there at the time. Coach Barnes played football at Carolina. He's the AD, and we were fairly close. So they reached out to me, and it was good timing for me because I was, like I said, I was getting kicked out of the house anyway for messing up the kids. So I had an opportunity to come in and take over an already established program, even though it was certainly some new faces that or some old faces that weren't going to be around that heavily contributed into their success. But I think with early on, we had guys like Lucas Prickett and Jordan Birch eventually came a couple of years later, and we were able to maybe not replace those guys necessarily with the upper level basketball talent, but certainly with athletes and guys that like to compete. And that's sort of I think the foundation of what I've tried to establish at Hammond from a program perspective is that if you play us, you're gonna feel it. We're gonna play you hopefully as hard as any team that somebody else whoever we're playing against plays against the entire year, and we certainly are going to compete for 4 quarters. Now we may get beat because the other team's got better players, and one of those losses this year was to your team. And I hope that was the case because I think we left it all on the floor. But you had some guys that could go this year.
Yeah, man. You guys definitely played us tough, man. That was one of our lowest scoring games of the year, and it was just nonstop, in your face, physical. Your son kicked our butts. And Marcella's son definitely couldn't miss. So.
Yeah, those two played pretty well, and sometimes that's been our problem. If we couldn't put the ball in the bucket, we got to have something else to rely on. Yeah. So, we in over the 9 years that I've been at Hammond, we've had some teams that could score. We've had some teams that couldn't score as well. But I would consider myself to be more of a defensive-minded coach than an offensive-minded coach. Yeah. I'd certainly like to be in the 40s and 50s rather than the 60s and 70s. And when typically, if we can defend and keep teams in that arena, then we have a pretty good chance to win the game. It's when we can't defend and keep teams like that in those scoring categories, then we have some problems. But ultimately, we spend a lot more time on defense than we probably do on offense.
For sure, we do as well. But you can tell you guys. You guys definitely, you were there on rotations, there on the weak sides. You got a lot of deflections that game. It was a rough one for us. It was one of our rougher games of the season. Definitely love the battle. I'm always into coaching against another Gamecock guy, man, and it gives the media a good.
You got plenty of options nowadays in South Carolina for sure.
Yeah, for sure, most definitely. And just speaking about South Carolina, going back to the SEC right now, right? Probably the best I've seen it in a long time. And I joked with Wallace and my guys about this. I said, man, I don't, and it's just me being funny, man. I said, man, I don't know, man. I don't know how good we could have been in this SEC because when you got, you know it, man. I've never seen a Mississippi State. I know Mississippi State has some good players. Auburn was Auburn, but Auburn has been Auburn for quite some time now. The
Sure.
Tennessees and the Floridas and Kentuckys were usually who they were. But now, as a whole in the SEC, I don't think I've seen it any better than what I see it right now.
Yeah, I mean, I do recall. I think my junior and senior year, that would have been 99, 2000, and 2000, 2001.
Yeah,
I think the SEC was probably the best conference in basketball my last 2 years.
for sure. Yeah.
But I would tell you that I don't think it compares collectively to the SEC of this year. The amount of teams that we have that have a legitimate opportunity to win a national championship, I think is certainly unparalleled. Right? I mean, we got probably 8 teams in the SEC that if you look at it, they probably have a legitimate chance to come out of the tournament as a national champion. And I don't think the league's ever had the depth like that that they have this year, for sure.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. And it's like no question is, everybody says SEC is a football league, but apparently they're making a
Not this year.
not this year, man. Definitely not this year. And it's March Madness, man. Who you got winning? Who do you think? Just give me a Final Four. Just give me a 4.
Sure.
Give me 4.
Well, a lot of it's going to depend on who ends up in what bracket, of course, right? But certainly, this is my favorite time of the year. I don't know if my workmates are going to be too impressed with my work product for the next 3 or 4 weeks, but I'm certainly going to have a good time. I'll certainly have most of the games on while I'm trying to do a little bit of work in between anyway.
Yeah.
But certainly Auburn, and I know they lost last night, but the toughness that they have and what they've shown all year long, I think they are certainly a team that should be able to make the Final Four, unless something crazy happens. Duke obviously is a team that is playing very well. I mean, my son is a huge Cooper Cup fan, as I'm sure most of the country is.
Yeah.
But I like the point guard as well. They have that's a freshman. They've got some guys that can go. The kid from Charlotte, I don't know why he's not. I guess he's learning how to defend, so he's seeing more minutes now.
Yeah.
But I don't know that I've ever seen a shooter like that guy. Every time it leaves his
man.
hand, it's got a higher percentage chance than most to go in.
Definitely got a chance.
So Duke's certainly a team that can win it. And other than that, I mean, I think we're looking at some other SEC teams, right? And certainly that's why I mentioned it's going to depend on what bracket they end up on. But Florida looks like as strong a team as anybody.
That's what
I know they
about
just
to
had a
say,
big
Florida.
win in Tuscaloosa the other night that I watched. Tennessee's playing very well. They're always going to be a tough out. Coach Barnes does a good job. You're going to have to play for 2 halves, 40 minutes against those guys.
Sure.
And then, you don't – Texas A&M just beat Auburn, right? And I know they're I think ranked number 12, and they're probably 7 or 8 in the league. But that's how deep the league is. You're talking, and we said we probably have 8 teams that have a legitimate shot of winning a national championship. I think they're certainly in the mix, and there's some other teams that on paper aren't looking as strong as they normally have, but these Big 12 teams seem to play very well in March as well, right? I don't ever count a Kansas team out, even though they're not playing as well as they have. Baylor's the same way. If any of those teams get hot. But the other team in the Big 12 that I think everybody's got to watch out for is Houston, obviously.
For sure.
And I know their ranking speaks for itself, but Auburn, Tennessee, Houston, all of those teams have very similar traits in that they are going to defend you for 40 minutes, and they've got athletes and shooters and rebounders that can affect you on the offensive end as well. I think they have a toughness element, those three in particular, that is a cut above the rest of the teams that are playing. And I think that's certainly a trait that's going to help lead them to the possibility of making a Final Four. So I think certainly those three, Duke and Houston and Auburn, are three of the ones that I would expect to see in the Final Four.
For sure, man. I definitely appreciate that, man. We can definitely wrap it up there with March Madness, man. I appreciate that Final Four, man. Pick one to win it all, man. We can get out of here. Who you got?
All right, now I grew up in St. Pete, but I was born in Auburn. My parents went to Auburn. My grandparents went to Auburn. My whole family essentially went to Auburn. So I'm going to stick with the Tigers. If I didn't say that, my dad was going to be mad at me. So I'm gonna go with Bruce Pearl's bunch, and hopefully, I think Denver Jones got hurt. I think he's got an ankle issue, and he's certainly one of the leaders for the Tigers defensively. If they can get him back healthy, I like their chances.
Auburn Tigers it is, man. Well, I definitely appreciate you for stopping by, man, and blessing us with your time, man. Thank you again.
Anytime, man. I appreciate it. I think this is a great deal that you are involved with and are doing and promoting some of the old guys and what we're doing now, because we've got a very strong tradition from a basketball perspective here, and we've got a lot of good players that have come out and I know we mentioned it briefly, but a lot of former players that are coaching high school basketball here in this state and elsewhere as well. So we're still a part of the game, and you're one of the ringleaders for sure. So I appreciate all you do, Carlos.
I appreciate you, man. Thank you, man. Another episode, Full Court with CP, man. We out.